Chair of the Presidential Task Force, honorable ministers, our guests, honorable members of the House of Representatives, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Today I'd like to address an issue that has led to quite a bit of conversation and consternation in some places. Visuals of people in treatment centers in relative comfort and the anxiety that has led to and discussions. Comparing those images to the images that we also see on TV of very severe cases in different parts of the world. And imagery we don't want to see in Nigeria. But if we have to, we will deal with it. But it's always important to remind people on the full spectrum of clinical presentation that we see with this new virus. We see a disease, a new disease that in 80% of cases, people are mildly or completely asymptomatic, i.e. they don't have any symptoms at all. Under normal circumstances, there wouldn't be any reason for these people to be in hospitals and to be isolated. The only reason we're isolating them is to prevent them from transmitting to others. Now, in many contexts in the world, when this outbreak first broke out in China, they carried out a very similar policy. They treated all the severe cases in hospitals and isolated every single person that was infected in isolation centers, the temporary isolation centers, some of which you saw being built in 10 days and 2 weeks. You remember those images on TV. In other countries in the world, and this is public knowledge, in Germany, in the West, in Western Europe, in the US, they've made a decision to treat all asymptomatic and mildly symptomatic people at home. That's a decision that they have made in that context. We have struggled with these decisions in Nigeria because we're struggling with the realities of where we live and the context that we live in. We want to prevent transmission, therefore we want to institutionalize the treatment of everyone. We've held back on advocating for home treatment and home isolation because we recognize that the circumstances in which many Nigerians live makes home isolation a very difficult and sometimes an impossible option for many people who live in very tight accommodation in family groups and communities. So there are no easy options. Every day we identify new patients. Yesterday we confirmed 199 newly infected people in Lagos State alone. It means that if we were to continue on our policy of institutional isolation and treatment for everyone, Lagos this morning has to find 199 new rooms to accommodate these newly diagnosed people. This is not possible in our reality. It is a simple fact. You can look at the numbers. As the numbers increase, we will struggle with this. So the Presidential Task Force and everyone involved in this response is having to think about alternatives. We're thinking about community management. We're thinking about home isolation. We haven't come out with any definite policy on this, but we are thinking about these things because we have to. It's not a choice. It's not an ideal scenario, but these are the realities of managing cases in our context, and we're looking at all the choices available to us, and we will have to make those decisions. We will make the best decisions available to us in the best interest of everyone, together with state governments, together with local governments, together with the private sector, to provide the best possible care for our people. Having said that, this is a new virus, and we're learning. Every day we're learning about transmissibility of the virus. Up till now, we have kept patients in care or advised that patients be kept in care until they turn out to be negative on the test that we're using, the PCR test. New evidence is emerging that even when the test is still positive, that in certain circumstances after that patient has been in care for a certain amount of time, it is possible and safe to discharge that patient to home isolation. So we're looking at the evidence, and we might change our guidelines over time. And I'm sharing this so that we start preparing ourselves for some changes in direction of how we are planning to go. But also to say that we are learning. There are no definites in this response. And the key thing is that we are ready to look at emerging science and change as we learn more about this new virus. We must never forget that we're in May. This is the month 5 since this new virus emerged. There's no other disease, as far as I remember, that we have learned so much so quickly as we have evolved our response. And with every new bit of knowledge we learn, we tweak the response a little bit in order to make it better. The biggest Achilles heel of this virus is that you can transmit it while you feel completely well. This is the biggest challenge we have, that you can transmit this virus while feeling completely well. And the people you transmit it to can be vulnerable. They can be those that will then get it and become extremely ill and sometimes pass away. So there's a responsibility that you have, not only to yourself, but to the most vulnerable in our society. And that is why it's so tricky to make these decisions, because you're not just deciding for yourself, do I isolate myself or not? This decision is important for you, but also your family and your loved ones. So as we go into this weekend, it's important that we think about these issues, and hopefully they will drive us into taking responsibility for those things that we can take responsibility for. I was happy yesterday to receive a new set of guidelines, draft guidelines, by the Public Transport Owners of Nigeria Association, PTONA. Those are people that manage the long-distance buses that travel across the country, what we call luxurious buses. They had drafted their own guidelines for reopening safely, and they sent it to us for review and to advise them on whether the measures that they are now recommending for how to manage their loading centers, their buses, their engagement with their customers at the point when we may allow them to reopen. And this is really what we've been advising every society, every organization, every community, be it faith-based, be it cultural-based, be it professionally based, to come up with guidelines for themselves. We're happy to advise, we're happy to engage, but this needs to be led and owned by the leaders of those organizations. We need every bit of society to take responsibility for that part where they own and manage. It's only by working through this that we'll be able to come out of this safely. But like the chair of the Presidential Task Force so eloquently said a few minutes ago, society will not be the same in the near future, and we have to really learn to adapt to it. And the earlier we do this, the better we can live safely into the future, at least for the short term. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.